This is Hannibal back here from the HannibalTV.com with a daily wrestling news update for you. Lots of news on this Sunday night. Derek Lewis, who has said he's in talks with WWE, also under the banner of TKO and UFC. Derek Lewis won by knockout last night, mooned the audience and threw his jock strap at the press table. So he's showing some charisma. Of course, Dana White said in the press conference after, as I previously reported, he has no problem with UFC fighters going to WWE now that Vince McMahon is not with WWE due to some what he called shady business tactics in the past with Vince and UFC. But honestly, have any UFC people successfully crossed over to WWE? Ronda Rousey got less popular. I wouldn't call her a flop in WWE, but she never reached the same popularity as she did in UFC and WWE. Cain Velasquez was a total flop. Lesnar got bigger by going to UFC, but he was already a wrestler. Ken Shamrock, I guess you could say he had a good run. Dan Severn, although he had success as a pro wrestler, you'd have to say that he did not have a very good run in WWE. So there isn't that many people that have done the crossover. In other news, Ric Flair, by the way, let's start with the poll. We had a poll. AEW has been really boring lately, hence why the ratings have been terrible. They've been getting so much bad publicity. They did not use Ric Flair at all this week, who was the most talked about wrestler in all of wrestling this week in the media. Of course, they only did a 0.24 rating for Dynamite. We had a poll on this channel. Almost 500 people voted, and 65% of you said AEW should have made use of the heat that Ric Flair has, but I don't understand them. I'm actually in full agreement with CM Punk that Tony Khan does not run AEW like a company. He'd rather have John Moxley in New Japan last night, where he was wrestling in California, even though as of yesterday afternoon, Moxley, as well as Jericho, who knows why he no showed, but as of yesterday afternoon, Moxley was being advertised on both the AEW website and the uh, the arena website to be showing up in Vancouver. So if you with all the billions you have in that company, don't you have people that can change the graphics if you know someone's wrestling for New Japan? And somebody had commented, well, if they weren't booked for the show, it's not their fault. Okay, so if Moxley and Jericho were never booked, why would you put them on the poster? You just put people on the poster that aren't booked. Think about that. Think about how shady that is. Anyways, the other thing I wanted to say, as I digress there, I was talking about Ric Flair, who they should have used in Vancouver, because it seems like it was a pretty lackluster taping in Vancouver. The restaurant Paisans issued a statement about Ric Flair getting booted out of the restaurant. Here it is by Jerry Roberts, the restaurant manager. Quote, "We have reviewed video of the incident that took place recently at our restaurant. It is clear our team worked in a professional manner to ensure the safety of the guests and staff. We have thanked our team for their professionalism and are proud of how they responded to the situation, using and displaying our team values," end quote. It has also been confirmed that Rick offered to debit a $1,000 tip, which the restaurant never rang up. So for Ric Flair, initially, keep in mind this to show you what a liar Ric Flair is. Initially, in his statement, he said he spent $1,500 at this restaurant, which, by the way, a large pizza there is $18.99 and breadsticks are $4.49. So if he spent $1,500. That's a lot of pizza and breadsticks. It later came out he only spent $200. He said this himself. He only spent 200 and tipped 1,000. Now it's come out that they didn't accept the $1,000 tip. So in fact, he only spent $200, which would make sense. He said he had several beers, several mixed drinks, and ate, and probably paid for his wife too. So that would be around $200. So him claiming that he spent 1,500 in there when they didn't actually debit the $1,000, and he changed his story that he spent from 500 to 200 on food. He didn't actually even spend that much, and he called them a lot of names. If you review the footage, he called people a hell of a lot of names, and we don't even know what he did in the bathroom. Where he was while he was looking through a stall, even he's admitted that, but if you can imagine what he was saying at the bar to whoever was in the bathroom stall, and then to the person that called him a peeping Tom for looking in the bathroom stall, he probably used fairly colorful language there too. But I agree with the fans. The fans have spoken. AEW should have done something with Ric Flair last night, or on Dynamite, because he did say he was still under contract to AEW during the Rampage Jackson podcast that he only did a few weeks ago. So I doubt they are going to use him again, but they don't give a fuck about ratings. Because if you cared about ratings, you would find a way to use Ric Flair, who was by far the most talked about wrestler of this week. By far. He was in the news all over the place. They did nothing with him. And one thing I have to say about Vince Russo, when you think about all these AEW wrestlers that just sit at home doing nothing, like Sammy Guevara, who's off suspension right now, Jeff Hardy, the long, long, long list of others. Vince Russo said during the Attitude Era, he always found a way to fit everyone into the show, even if it was in a 30-second backstage segment. So they're not just getting paid for doing nothing like they are in AEW. But AEW gives me a headache. I should ignore them. But I can't because it's my job to be a wrestling reporter. Speaking of AEW wrestlers last night who weren't on the AEW show, Eddie Kingston was also on the New Japan show. And he apparently hurt his legs on the guardrail. Took him a long time to get up after this injury. It's unknown how severe the injury is. There's also a lot of talk this week still about the fan verbally offending the AEW wrestler in Edmonton that led to the fan and his son getting kicked out. My God, is there nothing better to talk about? Maybe I'm from the bar industry where I'm used to throwing people out and people calling me names, and I've been a heel all my life and not only been attacked but called tons of names. Why is everyone still crying over somebody getting name called at a wrestling show that's making hundreds of $1,000s a year? They're working for that company. I understand if it no one has quoted what was actually said, but at some point there it's just a fan saying something and he got kicked out. Nobody was hurt. Why are we still talking about this? As far as Mercedes Monet, she was ejected from a or she was throwing out the first pitch at a Boston Red Sox game, not ejected. She was throwing out a first pitch at the Boston Red Sox game yesterday, and they announced her on the PA as Sasha Banks and said she was the first woman to main event WrestleMania, which is false. Apparently, according to Dave Meltzer, it was Ronda Rousey, Charlotte Flair, and Becky Lynch. I stopped caring about WrestleMania long before that main event, so I couldn't tell you if that was accurate or not. But I'll trust Meltzer to say that Sasha Banks wasn't the first woman to main event WrestleMania. Thank you, Alfred. Well, I have been in the pro wrestling business as a wrestler since 2001, as a promoter since 2006, and as a reporter since like 2012. Ric Flair does need a chaperone. I mean, I understand in WWE at first it was Bobby Heenan, and then it was Kurt Hennig. Arn Anderson always took care of him in NWA, but you have to imagine that there's probably been tons of incidents like this over the years. You just didn't hear about them before the internet, but he definitely needs somebody to like watch over him and get him out of those situations if he is going to continue drinking. And I'm not saying that as a bad, like, everybody has their own problems. Everybody's got drunk and done stupid stuff in their lives. I have as well. And I wish I had had a chaperone in certain places. And sometimes I have had friends that have been like, okay, you've had too much, let's get you out of there. But Rick needs someone like that if he's gonna go out and make a fool of himself like that. He should be smart enough to know in advance, maybe I should take somebody with me that's going to watch over me and get me out of those situations, or if they see people filming me and I'm still acting like this, like, truly get me out of there. That's why a lot of UFC fighters have bodyguards, even though they're UFC fighters, to avoid getting them sued or making fools of themselves. Ivan Santos Wrestling has a digital media championship. I'm sure there I can't keep track of all the championships. At one point, both AEW and Ring of Honor, which is the same company, had two six-man tag team championships. That's how diluted their belts were. There's just far too many championships these days and so many companies out there, I can't keep track. The one I'll count as the most important championship in wrestling, I would say, is the one that Cody has right now. Which, by the way, I was thinking back to yesterday when I was doing my New Japan memories update for my draft book, which I talked about. You guys could look it up, part 23. And I was talking about my match with AJ Styles in that back when he was New Japan champion, and also, which by the way, I got his belt right there back when it actually meant something. Um, Back then, Ring of Honor was less funded than it is now because AJ was wrestling in Ring of Honor and New Japan, but Ring of Honor actually was hotter around that 2014 era up to the era where Cody and the Young Bucks were in it than it is now. Will anyone disagree with me on that? That Ring of Honor was hotter when it was less funded in that 2014 era up until AEW kind of took over than it is now. Now it's not hot at all. It's just it's just programming that waters down AEW and makes the shows so long that like a quarter of the crowd or more leaves by the time the Ring of Honor tapings happen and leaves fans with an, "Oh my god, this is too much wrestling." I mean to me, Ring of Honor, as funded as it is right now, it's not popular at all. Nobody cares about it. And Tony Khan should focus on making AEW better. James agrees Ric Flair needs a chaperone. Alfred thinks his wife should take care of him. His wife seemed like a massive bitch when I met her. And that's all I can say about her. I don't know if she was there or not. If she was there that day, um, I can't imagine his wife would have been in there and let him act like that. If she was, I would find that very strange. But she very well could have been. Who knows? Bizarre situation. But we'll now that we have the poll results, which I mean, and we have the statement from the restaurant manager, I think it's safe to say that he behaved inappropriately, spent about $200, made a fool of himself, and probably won't be used by AEW again. I think we can put a ribbon on that.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please help me out and like this video, then click the subscribe and get notifications buttons so you don't miss any of my latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news.